Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to offer my greetings and welcome everyone this evening. Um, so uh, uh, at the monastery I'm currently visiting and staying at, Bodhisattva Forest Monastery. Um, we're preparing to do Sema ceremony here to put in our what's called a Sema. So for this is a boundary or a territory or an area that the monks do a ceremony to um, officially designate or as and set up as a place for us to do official acts of the Sangha. So, this is where we will get together to chant our Patimokkha or the recitation of our rules once every 2 weeks. There's a few other ceremonies, but the biggest one and the most important one we do is ordinations. So this is something that it's considered very important for the monastery to set one of these up. And a lot of times the view or the perception is that once a sema, this boundary has been set up, that the monastery is now really like complete. It's a proper monastery. It can do all the things um, uh, that we do as a sangha or a community of monks. So it's viewed as a very important ceremony. And a lot of times, this will be the biggest ceremony or this biggest event a monastery will ever have. And so I've come here to help prepare for it, to help do the work, because there's a lot of work getting ready for it. And as we're getting closer to the date, of course, there's more and more things to get done. And because it's such a big event, many, many monks are coming together to partake in this event. And just recently, our first big group of monks has arrived. And then from now until the event, we're going to keep getting more and more monks coming in. And so the monastery is filling up very quickly. It reminds me a lot of when I was a kid for Christmas time. There was this movie that my family would always watch called The Muppets Family Christmas. And not The Muppets Christmas Carol, but The Muppets Family Christmas. And basically, this is most of what this kids movie is just more and more people, well, not people, Muppets showing up to this this farmhouse, and it's getting overfilled and packed, and there's just so many people cramming into this house. And it kind of feels like that here. We're just starting, so it's not a very big monastery yet, so there's more and more people. Overnight we have maybe 4 or 5 times as many monks as we had, a week ago. And so it just keeps, it keeps filling up. And this is just, how it's going to be for this next period of time. So a lot of times, you don't have that personal space you had before. You don't have, things have changed. And so, for monks and, people in general, there's this thing that we really enjoy, and as monks, we really look for. It's called like viveka or seclusion or solitude. And there's different types of it. And one is, called kaya viveka. So like physical or bodily seclusion. So this is, especially for forest monks, this is something we go for. You read in the suttas, or um, uh, you listen to the teachings of a lot of the forest masters, and they would go out into the forest, look for a really quiet place where there's no one around. They're physically very secluded from all these other people, all these distractions. And then when an event like this is happening and, everyone's coming in, all of a sudden you don't have that kaya wake anymore, or it's going to be much more difficult to find this type of kaya wake. Um, which, but then there's other types of seclusion. So there's this thing called Cittaviveka, or like the solitude or seclusion of the mind, like a mental seclusion. And so Lumpur Samedo likes to tell this story when he first went and started the first Western monastery in England. Um, it was it was an old house, so it was this big old manor house that was offered to the Sangha, and it was completely dilapidated, and they were all living together in it and repairing it, building it. And so Lumpur Sumedho said, he knew that when he was going to the West, because there's so many people living so close together, that he wasn't going to get any type of Gaya Viveka. So he named the monastery Chitta Viveka, just so as this reminder of um, this mental seclusion. And, this is something we can have and we can do in our daily lives. And so even now, with all these monks coming in, with the amount of people here growing for the next amount of time, even though you're surrounded by a lot of people, we can be mentally secluded and not have our mind as shaken up or as bothered by all the activity and all the craziness going on around us. Lumpur Sumedho also, when he went to the West, he had this, he said it was kind of like a symbol or like a logo for him, this image he'd bring up in his mind of this Tibetan tanka, or this, one of these Tibetan paintings of the lotus inside of an inferno. So it's a lotus and it's surrounded by fire in the middle of a fire, but it's not getting burnt and it's not getting affected by the fire. And so he said, for him, that was um, inspiration or a symbol of how he was going to practice and when he went to the West. So to be able to, achieve this idea of mental seclusion, um, it's important for us to really work on our mindfulness and having our mindfulness in place. So, we use the word mindfulness, but sometimes it's we're not really clear what exactly that means for us. So Ajahn Jayasaro, he describes it very well. He says, mindfulness, or the word in Pali is sati. So sati has, two functions. One function is bringing something into mind. So that ability to bring something up into mind. And then the other function of it is being able to hold that object in our mind. So you can see it when we are using meditation or our practice, being able to say, bring up the breath. So, we remember to watch our breath, to bring the breath up into the mind, but then also being able to hold that breath in mind. And so, when we are in these situations where, things are kind of crazy, we can do this. We can go back to the breath. We can go back to some kind of mindfulness object or meditation object. And we make this kind of our refuge or our safe space for this time and say, when we've, say, been practicing meditation for a while, we get very used to the breath. We get very, accustomed to the breath. And the breath, we can start building this perception that, the breath is a safe space. This is a place where we, it is something peaceful for us. It is something calming for us. So we can, when things are getting crazy, we can just, take a second, no one around us even has to know, and just bring our mindfulness back to the breath and just ground ourselves for a while. Or sometimes if we notice that moods, these different types in Thai, arome, so these different types of moods are coming up, we might start watching that too. Bring our mindfulness to that mood and be like, okay, I'm starting to get a little irritated. I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed. Let's keep an eye on this. Let's be careful, so right away, okay, this mood's coming up. I got to watch and be more mindful of, say, my actions or my speech. Because when this mood comes up, maybe I get a little snappy sometimes. But I also find it's really helpful, to bring up these little Dhamma reflections, we have. And sometimes, I like to do it in, the form of a question. So, when you're in these situations where there's a lot of going on, a lot of people around, it can be at work, it could be, in this situation, like in a monastery, it could be if you go out somewhere, um, and it can just be kind of this natural thing we like to fault find. Oh, people should be doing this. They shouldn't be doing this. It should be like this. It should be like that. And that's going to create suffering for us. So, and I remember the first Dhamma talk I ever heard when I arrived at Wat Pananachat as a layman, by Ajahn Nando, who's the abbot at the time. This one saying from it really stuck out to me. He said, "The fault-finding mind never finds peace." And so when our mind does get into that, that fault finding, it should be like this, it shouldn't be like that, it's going to create suffering for us. So, it's one of those things if we find ourselves doing that, just to remind us bring that up. Oh, am I suffering? Am I creating more suffering for myself right now? Oh, am I fault finding? Or, we can remind ourselves, is this permanent? Is this situation permanent? Um, and really just, keep bringing these kind of Dhamma reflections up into our mind. I remember once a layperson went to go see this very senior monk in Thailand, and I was there at the time, and was asking questions about these reflections and stuff. And one of the things he recommended for her was to keep like a little amulet or a little Buddha statue or something on her. And so when she, started to get upset, started to get these strong feelings, she could just, it'd be in her pocket or wherever she kept it. She could just, feel it with her hand and use that as a way to remind her um, to bring up these Dhamma reflections, to bring up this mindfulness. So sometimes having that physical thing there, because as we've all discovered over time, we can learn as many teachings as possible, every teaching out there. But if we don't remember to bring them up when we actually having the situation, when we're actually in the difficult times, it doesn't help us. And so we can start, developing those little skillful ways to, try to deal with these situations. Or we can look at it, try to, change the way we're viewing it, change our perceptions on these situations. So for example, the one I'm in right now, and I'm having a good time. I'm not complaining about it, but where there is so many people here, I can look at, oh, oh, it was so quiet before this, or oh, it's so much work, or we were doing things like this before, and now we've doing things like that. Or, I can change my perception on it and just start reflecting. Oh, actually, there's a lot of people coming together and doing really good things, a lot of people, I'm friends with, I've known for a long time, or even a lot of people I don't know, but, have all decided to come together for this event and do good and just start reflecting on that and start reflecting on the goodness that, is being done. And so it's one of these ways where we can, try to actively um, change our perceptions and create new perceptions about the event, so it's, trying to look at it from the right angle. And so, but then sometimes, there is that time when we do need to look after ourselves. We need to recharge our batteries. So, if it's possible, the idea of getting away for a bit, having time to calm down, having time to, recharge our batteries, do some meditation, or even if it's just really you just need to sleep, because sometimes, we can only push ourselves so far. You can only burn the candle from both ends for so long. So there's that time when, it is okay to, just take a break and be like, okay, I've done as much as I can. I've pushed as much as I can. I do need to recharge right now. I remember reading a book by Bhante Gunaratana, and he was one of the things he recommended was, for people, say when they're at work, to every once in a while, like say every hour or so, to just, if it's possible, just take a minute or two to just, stop and start watching the breath, start, reestablishing mindfulness and just, really coming back and kind of grounding yourself again because it's easy to, you just keep going and going and going. And but sometimes we feel we want to help other people out as much as we can, or we want to do as much as we can. And sometimes, it can feel very selfish looking after ourselves. It's like, oh, I should be doing stuff for others. I should be doing this for that. But, we need to look after ourselves. It's like the analogy which is always used. It's like on the planes when the oxygen masks drop down. They always say, put your oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on. So it's like that in life too. We have to look after ourselves as well to be able to look after other people, to help other people out. Because at the end of the day, we when we come to practice Dhamma, when we come to practice meditation, we're saying we want to take responsibility for our own happiness. Our happiness isn't to, and our suffering isn't based on other people and what they do. Is we're coming back and we're kind of taking control of that again, and we're saying, okay, I'm going to be responsible for my happiness. I'm going to learn how to become happy in any situation and learn how to let go of suffering. So I'd like to offer that to everyone as a reflection for this evening.